I always wanted to be on this subcommittee, so I'll try to be your second favorite. That'll be a challenge. To the family members here, I couldn't help but search my memory from high school in the Arthur Miller play about All My Sons, if you remember that, about people who built military aircraft in World War II and cut corners. The ending of the play was by the person who was involved in cutting corners, and I'm not saying that this was the case in this instance, said I should have thought of all of those pilots as my children. And I think there's a good analogy here that we all should think of any loss of life should, although they weren't our children, we should think of it that way. Captain Sullenberger, nice to see you.
Good to see you, Congressman.
For the chair and others, Captain Sullenberger has had the good wisdom to live in my district from time to time, so we've gotten to be friends, and I have great respect. We're working on a bill on safe landings as a consequence of the Air Canada near miss at SFO, and I want to thank the committee staff and the chair for helping with that. We spent a lot of time, you and I, talking about human factors, and you talked about it in your comments, and Captain Carey, and maybe you can jump in here, and your comment that we can no longer define safety as the absence of accidents, I think was very well put. So I look at the aviation industry, my perspective is you've got these issues on technology and human factors that we see in the chemical industry, the refining industry, the healthcare industry, and we're learning more and more about neuroscience and how we can help with that. So being able to do that is important, but you also have, in my view, the coming consequences for the aviation industry on climate change, how we're going to deal with that. I had an amendment put in appropriations that Academy of Sciences would look at that and look at all transportation, because we're going to have more disruptions and pilots are going to have, and air traffic controllers, more challenges, and I anecdotally can see that. And then lastly is, what's a reasonable rate of return for the shareholders, knowing that you want private investors, but when they can move their investments around, there's pressure sometimes to cut corners. And sometimes to some people that's a euphemism for efficiency. So when it comes to human factors and the blending, particularly of new technology, both of you have been eloquent, but could you add a little bit more to that we could institutionalize it? Because I'm afraid we've become compliant or complacent in this field because of our great safety record.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you for including in your bill much more emphasis on and funding for study of human factors. And as we use more and more technology, that human-machine interface is going to become even more important. I would say that talking about the federated versus integrated system, where Boeing, as a fix for this lately discovered instability issue with the MAX, they have appended to a conventional airplane a computer-controlled system, but without giving it the integrity, the reliability, the redundancy that it should have had. And so that needs to be part and parcel of everything that we do going forward, making sure that when we have any device or feature in an airplane that can autonomously move flight controls, in this case a secondary flight control, or change engine thrust, it needs to be built to those high standards and certified to those high standards.
Captain Carey, you have anything to add before I yield the balance of my time so I can...
I'll leave you some time left, sir.
Please.
I just have a quick comment about the near miss at San Francisco. And we talk about one level of safety all the time. The Canadian pilots have much more liberal flight time, duty time regulations than the U.S. pilots have. And I think maybe future panels should look into requiring overseas carriers to operate into our country under our rules and regulations.
I'm going to yield back the balance of my time and thank the chairman for letting me sit on this hearing.
That's fine. Thank you, Representative DeSaulnier. So I understand there's no other questions from other members. I do have one set of questions for the